Morant with a running start. Elevate! Oh, he dunks! Oh, my goodness!
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn his heat. It's gone! Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now a three. Count it! A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant! He hit it! John Morant, insanity!
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. The Grizzlies found out where they're going to pick in the 2024 draft. They ended up with the 9th pick as a result of the draft lottery, which occurred on Sunday. Obviously, not a good result for the Grizzlies, who hope to get lucky and jump up into the top 4. That did not happen for them. Meanwhile, two other teams, the Hawks and the Rockets, jumped above Memphis. Thus, the Grizzlies slid down to 9th. Picking 9th, reminder, that was the 3rd most likely outcome for the Grizzlies going into the lottery, with a 13% chance of occurring, but still, that doesn't make us really feel any better. So on this episode, now that we know where the Grizzlies are going to draft in next month's draft, I'll talk about some possible draft options for the Grizzlies and some trade options as the Grizzlies look to improve their roster. Before we do that, just a word from Underdog Fantasy. I've been using Underdog Fantasy for quite a while, I think, as you know, but they have raised their deposit match for new users. So if you want to play fantasy sports for cash, it's a good time to try them out, because if you use my promo code FBBF, as in Fast Break Breakfast, they will now match your opening deposit up to $250. They will also give you a free pick to start. So if you want to give them a try, use that promo code FBBF or click the link in this episode's description. Now, the Grizzlies, you would say, you know, a little bit unlucky. Not a lot unlucky. I was hosting a live watch party thing over on Playback. By the way, if you want to watch that, it's on the Fast Break Breakfast YouTube channel, or it's on the Fast Break Breakfast Patreon page for those Patreon supporters. But I had some things I was cheering for, mainly for teams to get unlucky, and other teams actually got quite unlucky. I don't think the Grizzlies were the least lucky team by far. I think the most unlucky team, I mean, not statistically, of course, but like the most unlucky teams, I think one was the Raptors, who lost their pick. They ended up giving the Spurs the 8th pick. I mean, there was a 53% chance of that occurring. So again, not technically unlucky, but, you know, them tanking and then losing their pick feels unlucky. Then you look at the Pistons. The Pistons, of course, had a horrifying year, set the NBA record for most consecutive losses in a single season. Despite that, they fell from the 1st spot all the way to the 5th spot. Again, statistically, the most likely thing that was going to occur. But still, for Pistons fans to go through that season to end up with the 5th pick, then you look at like the Hornets and the Trailblazers. Both of those fan bases suffered through 60 loss seasons, and they end up with the 6th and 7th picks in what everyone is saying is a weak draft. Now, big winner, of course, Atlanta Hawks, who get the 1st pick. The Rockets jump up. Despite a pretty small percentage chance of that occurring, the Rockets had a 20% chance to jump into the top 4 by way of this Nets pick that was unprotected, and that happened for them. The Hawks, by the way, had a 3% chance at the 1st pick. So with this lottery, the way it shaked out, I think, you know, most people were considering how it affected the Grizzlies' ability to get Donovan Clingan. I mean, frankly, all I see is everyone talking about Donovan Clingan going to the Grizz because the Grizzlies have such a massive hole in the front court. They need a center to play alongside Jaren to help Jaren out. They want to have a big. They have to replace Steven Adams somehow. They just got to get another big, especially with them getting rid of Xavier Tillman, along with Steven Adams during the regular season. And also Xavier Tillman just wasn't good enough for what they want to do, which is win multiple playoff series. So they need a big, and everyone had been, I think, penciling Clingan as the great option for Memphis. But now that they've dropped to 9th, that feels much less likely. Now, we don't know if Clingan will be there or not at 9. One thing about this draft, no one really knows who's going anywhere. There seems to be some consensus that like Alex Sarr is going to go in the top 3, probably 1 or 2. It would be very surprising at this point if he falls out of the top 3. Beyond that, it's just flat as far as lots and lots of names, and you don't know who exactly is going to get taken. And also, it bears repeating, we have no idea if Donovan Clingan is on the board and the Grizzlies were picking. We have no idea if that is who the Grizzlies would draft. I feel like that bears repeating as many times as possible. I have no idea if they're interested in Donovan Clingan. He seems like he'd be a good fit, but who knows what the front office thinks. But now that the Grizzlies do know that they're 9th, I think we can kind of look at like what bigs might be available at that point or even later in the draft, and also just look at who is going to be possibly available. And then also we can identify maybe some trade opportunities. Let's start with what the draft experts are saying. You guys know I am not a draft expert. I'll try to not overuse the caveat that I'm not an expert here. I'm just reading what the experts are saying and then filtering it through my own weird opinions. But right now, the way a lot of these mock drafts are shaking out after the lottery, the Grizzlies have, I think this is encouraging, the Grizzlies have a lot of options of players that I know I would be totally happy with. Again, speaking from a certain level of ignorance, I'm still excited about a lot of these guys who could fall to the Grizzlies. But right now, ESPN has mocked out that the Grizzlies could get Steph Castle from UConn. The guy sounds like a total baller. I'm completely in on that option. Even if we don't get a big right there, even if it doesn't fit an exact team need by being another guard, guy sounds incredible. I'd be excited about that. That's what Jonathan Givony and Jeremy Woo have mocked out for the Grizzlies. Bleacher Report, Jonathan Wasserman at Bleacher Report, he has Ron Holland going to the Grizzlies. And guess what? Lots of other outlets have the Grizzlies taking Ron Holland. I am a sucker for all these G League Ignite guys who have these incredible measurables and seem to be super athletic. So like, I'm in on Ron Holland. I'm also in on the fit. He's a small forward type, 6'8" or so. And yeah, we have multiple options at small forward now with Vince Williams Jr.'s emergence, with Gigi Jackson's emergence. But like, you can never have too many 6'8" guys who can play. And apparently he's a great lob finisher, extremely athletic. That's what this team needs. They need more athleticism, in my opinion. I'd be super excited about Ron Holland. By the way, Ron Holland is Bleacher Report's #1 prospect on their big board. By the way, John Hollinger at The Athletic just released his top 20 players or his big board. He has Ron Holland #1 as well. So maybe Ron Holland will be a riser, because I'm seeing a lot of people talking about take Ron Holland. Brian Schroeder, who's a friend of mine, who's a draft expert. He's the guy who came on a couple years ago, suggested the Grizzlies take Vince Williams Jr. in the second round. Brian Schroeder also, big fan of Ron Holland. He's saying, after the top 4 or 5 guys, just take Ron Holland. It's going to be a good option. So Bleacher Report mocks out Ron Holland going to the Grizzlies at 9. The Ringer, Kevin O'Connor at The Ringer, he mocks out Ron Holland going to the Grizzlies. Sam Vecini, also at The Athletic, he has Ron Holland going to the Grizzlies. So, Mike, as far as, there is kind of a lack of consensus in this draft, right now there seems to be trending. A lot of people thinking, all right, Ron Holland could be a good option for the Grizzlies. As far as the rest of the top 10, consensus right now, again, like less than 24 hours removed from the lottery, most people think the Hawks are going to take Alex Sarr. Beyond that, a lot of question marks. A majority of people think the Pistons at 5 are going to take Buzelis. Apparently, Buzelis' agent is Arn Tellem's son. And of course, Arn Tellem kind of runs the Pistons. They're a weird cartel/nepotism franchise, it seems like. So that is why I think everyone is linking Buzelis, who's supposed to go, again, he's supposed to go top 10. That's not like a reach. But the fact that Arn Tellem's son, Michael, is his agent, Feels like, oh yeah, well, the Pistons are going to get him. It's similar to the clutch connection with the Lakers, the CAA connection with the Knicks. That feels like a thing that might happen. Beyond that, there's just a lot of question marks. I mean, maybe a lot of people think the Spurs are going to get Nikola Topic. But like, we don't actually know what's going to happen. I think the exciting thing for Grizzlies fans, even though, you know, you're a little disappointed that you fell to 9th, that like you're going to get one of the following guys: Ron Holland, Steph Castle, Dalton Connect, Cody Williams, Modest Buzelis, Reed Shepard, Rob Dillingham, Nikola Topic, Donovan Clingan. If you stay at 9, one of those guys will be available. And that's pretty cool. All those guys have great upsides. Now, there also might be other guys that we don't even know that the Grizzlies could be considering. Like, just because of the way this draft is with no consensus, like clear-cut tiers, I mean, you could even see him maybe reach a little bit if they stay at 9. And like, there are other bigs in this draft. Like, I'm seeing Kel'el Ware from Indiana. I mean, is that a reach at 9? Maybe, but like, maybe you fall back to like the 14th pick. Maybe you trade back. But also, if like someone might take him at 14, it wouldn't be shocking to me if the Grizzlies go ahead and take the guy they want at 9. Yves Missy from Baylor. Of course, Zach Edey from Purdue. Kyle Filipowski from Duke. All of these guys are centers or bigs who could go in the first round. The Grizzlies could definitely walk away with one of those guys. Now, let's imagine, however, that the Grizzlies were, in fact, obsessed with Donovan Clingan. And they think that Clingan, who, by the way, just measured at the NBA Draft Combine, he's a legit 7'1". Like, he's a big dude. I didn't realize he was that huge. So let's say the Grizzlies are super focused on Clingan. What are the odds he actually falls to 9? I would say not good. I would say with the way his stock rose on UConn's title run, makes it unlikely. I'm seeing some people point out the teams ahead of the Grizzlies, and they don't have a clear-cut need at center. Maybe that's true. I mean, let's say the Hawks, right? The Hawks, if they stay at 1, they're probably taking Alex Sarr, and that might have a trickle-down effect to the Grizzlies as far as the trade. Of course, it might make Onyeka Okongwu more available. Talk about that more in a second. It might make Clint Capella more readily available. But like, let's say the Hawks take Sarr. The Wizards, they could definitely take Clingan at 2. They need a big, but they also need everything. So maybe they'll be more apt to take a player who plays at a position of greater need, where there's, you know, a little bit more scarcity, like a wing or a guard. So like maybe the Wizards don't do it. You look at the Rockets at 3. The Rockets, of course, have it Şengün. The Rockets also, of course, traded for Steven Adams. And people are like, all right, so they don't want Clingan. I mean, not so fast. They might. I mean, Clingan as a young guy seems like a great fit alongside Şengün. And like, maybe they don't know what Steven Adams is going to give them. So it's not like a clear need for the Rockets, but like, I could see him taking Clingan. The Spurs, who have the 4th and the 8th pick, I mean, yeah, they seems like they would take him. I mean, maybe they do take Topic, or they go for one of the guards or a wing player. I mean, you'd think out of one of those 2 picks, if they keep them both, you're absolutely going to take a guard or a wing with one of them. But with the other one, yeah, seems like Clingan would be a really good fit. The Hornets, you say they have Mark Williams and Nick Richards. So, I mean, Mark Williams was hurt all year. Nick Richards ain't all that. It's like, I think they could definitely take him. I mean, this is just to say, like, I can see every team ahead of them, even the Trailblazers, who are picking at 7th. Yeah, they have DeAndre Ayton. They have Robert Williams. But, like, Clingan and Ayton, kind of different players. Also, this team is looking towards the future. They're not planned on just next season. Also, they're probably not going to keep hoping Robert Williams is healthy. So, all that to say, I don't know if there are high odds that Clingan remains available for the Grizzlies at 9. But I do think, you know, the Grizzlies could trade up. And I don't know what the price would be. I think it's interesting to think about what would it take to trade up to 1. I mean, the Hawks, they have Jalen Johnson and Okongwu, who are very, very good power forward / bigs. And if Sarr isn't necessarily straight up going to be a 5 when he first comes in, like, do you need all of those guys together? Maybe the Hawks, who also have been rumored to be shopping Trae Young this offseason. If the Hawks are going to do a total rebuild, I mean, maybe they'd want to trade Trae for some picks and then use that number 1 overall pick on Sarr. But maybe they would just take more assets and say, hey, you want to give us the 9th pick and a future first-round pick? And maybe you want to take some bad money off our hands? You want to take back DeAndre Hunter or something? I mean, those are things that Grizzlies could offer. I don't know what it would take to pry that free from the Hawks. But even if you don't trade all the way up to 1, I think you could look at the Pistons. I mean, the Pistons, again, sort of the big losers of the lottery. Like, they don't need a center. They don't need Klingon with the 5th pick. If you really want Klingon and the Pistons are sitting there at 5 and say they'd really focused on whoever, Topic, or they really wanted Dillingham or Buzelis, or they wanted Reese Shea, like, all right, if the Pistons guy is off the board at 5, you could probably trade with the Pistons. They need lots of things. Give them the 9th pick. Give them a future first. Maybe they have some interest in like Santi Aldama or Jake LaRavia. Maybe you could do a deal there, move up to 5 with the Pistons. Same thing with Hornets and Trailblazers at 6 and 7. You could probably make a deal happen. I will tell you out there, when you're making up your fake trades for the Grizzlies to move up, do one thing for me. Stop including Luke Kennard as a positive trade asset. Luke Kennard, positive NBA player. Trading Luke Kennard to a team, it's not going to get you very much. Like, I'm not sure you could get picks back, like even second-round picks back for Luke Kennard, because like $15 million is kind of a lot. Not a lot of teams with cap space who just want to give you second-round picks for a Luke Kennard. Like the teams with cap space, they're all kind of bad, or they're the 76ers. The 76ers have no interest in Luke Kennard. The Magic might have interest in Luke Kennard, but that's only if all their other free agent deals fall through, and they're not going to pay you for him. So, like, you can't trade the 9th pick and Luke Kennard to move to 7th. That's not going to happen. And also, I can say the same thing about the other worst players on the Grizzlies. Like, maybe somebody'd give you something for Jake LaRavia or Santi Aldama or Zaire Williams or John Conchar. I think those are kind of neutral-ish players. They might have the value of a second-round pick. So, like, maybe, you know, it's like something to sweeten the deal, but it's not going to be the main thing that moves you from 9 to 6. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong many, many times. But Luke Kennard plus the 9th pick does not get you anything better than just the 9th pick, in my opinion. Thinking about those trades with the Hawks, by the way, I mean, I feel like I have to talk about it because I'd focus so much on trading for Onyeka Okongwu, because I think he's a perfect fit for a front court with Jaren Jackson Jr. The fact that he's a lob finisher and he can make corner three-pointers and he's young and he's on a good contract seems to be an ideal target for the Grizzlies. All of those things I just said are reasons why the Hawks would not trade him. But if this lottery win for the Hawks makes them more likely to move on, I think that's someone you would pounce on. You might offer the 9th pick to the Hawks just for Okongwu. I mean, Okongwu was, I believe, the 6th pick a few years ago. And maybe you're hoping to shoot higher with your 9th pick. But it makes a lot of sense to me. A less sexy trade option, maybe less sexy, maybe you like it more. If the Pistons stay at 5, let's say the Pistons even consider taking Donovan Klingon, which would be weird with having Jalen Duren. But if they took a big, then maybe Isaiah Stewart would be available. So maybe because of this lottery results, you could possibly pry Isaiah Stewart free from the Pistons. It's not a terrible fit. He is a willing three-point shooter, not a particularly good one. He's a bit undersized, but like he could be a good front court pairing as far as a useful player to have for the Grizzlies. Also, when I think about the Grizzlies and I think about the Donovan Klingon thing, I think about our hole at center. I think one of the most interesting things to wonder is how much they even, want or are going to prioritize a big who just isn't a shooter. I know they've talked about getting someone, they didn't say specifically like Steven Adams, but getting a big like Steven Adams. We read between the lines when we think about a guy who can screen and free our offensive players. And of course, I always talk about, my desire for the Grizzlies to have better rebounding players. And despite the fact that the Grizzlies were, awful at three-point shooting last year. We blame some of that to injury luck. But, like, they've been bad for years now at three-point shooting. And Ja Morant, ideally, would have a big partner who could space the floor with some shooting, like a Brook Lopez type. That kind of player who defensively can protect the rim, can help with team rebounding, and then offensively can screen and hit threes. And I think that is probably the prototype they're going for. I think the Grizzlies ideally would want Ja Morant to be the worst shooter in any lineup. But we don't get to pick the perfect players, and sometimes you just got to make do with what you have. I mean, honestly, I've criticized the front office, like them letting go Kyle Anderson they were going for the perfect prototype of player as far as making do with what they had. And I do think it's interesting or important to note that when you're talking about centers, whether it is a guy in this draft, a non-shooter like a hustle big, or like a Klingon or something, or if you're looking at free agent guys and you're saying, well, I don't want this guy, he can't shoot. It is important to think about just having better players, just having a center who's better than guys you had last year, just having a guy who can screen and rebound. Even if that player doesn't shoot, that will increase your team's three-point percentage. The Grizzlies shooters will get better looks if they have somebody who can screen for them. If they have a big who can screen and pass, that's going to give your team better overall three-point looks. That should increase your team's three-point percentage, even if that center does not shoot threes. Also, and this can't be overstated, I don't think, getting a big who rebounds well in offensive rebounds, that will increase your team's three-point percentage because those reload three-pointers, those three-pointers off of offensive rebounds, are usually more open, and you can make those at a higher percentage. So even if you don't find the ideal fit or the ideal, if you were building a player in a lab and you're saying, oh, I want a lob finisher, rim protector who's very switchable and also hits threes. Yeah, sure. Everybody wants those. If you can't get the guy who can hit threes, at least get the good screener, good passer, good rebounder. That will improve your offense. That will improve your three-point shooting, even if the player is not the one, or the specific big is not the one making the threes. But the kind of player the Grizzlies are seeking out at the 5, that to me it's a little bit unknowable, or at least it's a question mark. And so that, I think, makes it incredibly intriguing to follow exactly, what they are going to do. Also looking at this draft, maybe it's not the Grizzlies that trade up. There are some other teams that could possibly trade up, and that would shake up the lottery. Like, what if the Spurs wanted to move up? Like, what if they are really focused on getting whoever it is, Sarr or Risache? Like, they could take the 4 and the 8, possibly move up. I mean, like, the Wizards might trade down because the Wizards have so many needs. You look at the Trailblazers. Trailblazers have 7 and 14, I think. Like, they could possibly move up. So at this point, I mean, anything could happen over the next, month and a half as the NBA heads to the draft and then goes into free agency. And of course, the Grizzlies, there's no specific one option they have to go to. Again, like, you don't need to take a big necessarily with that first pick. There will be big options you could, get in free agency, even if you don't take someone in the draft. I mean, as always, you assume they're not going to draft for need. They're going to draft the best player they think is there. Like, maybe that's Reed Shepherd or Rob Dillingham or Steph Castle or whoever. And then, like, you can sign a big. You can always sign a big. I think the playoffs have shown us, maybe it's a good thing or a bad thing. Like, some guys I highlighted as potential free agents for the Grizzlies this upcoming offseason, like, they're not getting that much playing time. Like Jalen Smith, I think it would be good for the Grizzlies. He's not really playing for the Pacers in this playoff series. You could say that, well, that's the reason I don't want him. All right. He's better than the guys we have. Gogo Batadze did not play very much for the Magic in their series loss to the Cavaliers. Guys like that will be available, and I think they're useful players for the Grizzlies who just need a big body. They need useful minutes out of that 5 spot, and so you could find that through free agency or, again, like the draft, not just the 9th pick. The Grizzlies have the 39th pick also. They have the 57th pick as well, but I could very much see the Grizzlies maybe not making a trade. They could take just a wing, whatever best player. Maybe it's Ron Holland. with that 9th pick. And then with the 39th pick, you could take it big there. And that player could go onto a 2-way contract. So there's plenty of ways for the team to improve. Exactly how they do it, that remains to be seen. But we will dive more into it in the coming weeks. And I will get some draft experts on here to help me out. But right now, things we know. The Grizzlies ended up with the 9th pick, and there are a lot of interesting players they could end up with. Like, I mean, if they take the UT guy, Dalton Connect, just a scorer, this team needs scoring. They were terrible at scoring. I mean, maybe it isn't a perfect fit on your roster, but like the roster needs to be rebalanced, not even counting the draft pick. I've been consistent on this. Like Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, Luke Kennard, Vince Williams Jr., it's too many overlapping skill sets, and we know we're keeping Ja and Desmond, so like it makes sense to me to clear out either Luke or Marcus, Conchar or Zaire. One of those guys can be moving out. So like, we can balance the roster other ways, and that's not going to keep me from taking an elite young guard who I think maybe fits in great. Like if Steph Castle's there and they think he's the best player available, great, let's draft him, and we can rebalance the rest of the roster through trades this offseason. Anyways, those are my first impressions over the Grizzlies being at 9th. I'm curious what you guys think. What do you think they should do with the pick, and what you think they should do this offseason. Anyways, if you want to support my show, do that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. If you join up over there, you can join the Grits and Grinds Slack channel. You can also listen to the audio version of the live lottery show I did on Sunday. A little bonus episode is up for you over there. If you want to try out Underdog Fantasy, remember that promo code FBBF. All right. Hope you guys have a great week. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz.